The journey on the raft had taken up the whole morning, but still the afternoon stretched ahead of them, thick and green and vibrating with heat. "We need more wood," said Fred. They would burn through what they had by the time dark came. They needed so many things, he thought. Food, and a plan, or a map, or a passing ship. But at least wood was something he knew where to find. His vision swam as he stood. He was growing weaker, and the blood in his veins felt thinner. At first, Fred went fast, his head down, marking the trees with an X scratched in the bark, watching his feet among the roots and the fallen branches. But soon he began to slow. There was so much to look at, so much that was strange, so much that was new and vast and so very palpably alive. The trees dipped down their branches, laden with leaves, broad enough to sew into trousers. He passed a tree with a vast termite nest, as big as a bathtub, growing around it. He gave that one a wide berth. The greenness, which had seemed such a forbidding wall of colour, was not, up close, green at all. Fred thought. It was 1,000 different colours, lime and emerald and moss and jade, and a deep, dark, almost black green that made him think of sunken ships. Fred breathed in the smell. He'd been wrong to think it was thick, he thought. It was detailed. It was a tapestry of air. The trees clustered more closely together the further he walked. The light grew dimmer, though he was sure it was still mid-afternoon, a deep green filtering down through a roof of leaves and vines. He heard something move in one of the green bushes that clustered around his feet. "Hello," he called. He stepped backwards. "Hi?" As he called, something sharp scraped against his arm. He jumped and leapt away, swearing, and felt his mouth was filled with the taste of fear, bile and tin. But it wasn't a snake or even a spider. "Being stupid," muttered Fred. "It was just a bush." Or perhaps it wasn't even a bush. He leant closer. It was a clump of spiky fruit. "A pineapple," he whispered aloud. Fred felt his fingertips prickle, shot through with the spark of discovery. This, he thought, must be what Columbus had felt like. He reached out to pull the fruit from its throne of leaves, and then snatched his hand back, watching blood swell from a serrated gash in his thumb. "Ach!" he whispered. He braced himself, wrenched up 5 of the biggest pineapples, and set off at a run, a slightly jolting run, checking every few trees for the X and doubling back 3 times. At last, he burst through the trees at the edge of the clearing. He was met by a scream. "Get back!" Leela was standing in front of Max, one arm pushing him behind her, a stick pointed in the direction of Fred's throat. Con stood behind her, fists raised. "I brought some pineapples," panted Fred. Then slowly he took in the scene. He grinned. "Were you guys planning to kill me?" "We thought you were a wild animal," Con said, flushing deep red. "Call out next time you come charging straight at us." It was Max who saw the pineapples in his arms. He gave a roar of joy that shook the fire, and he sat down, his teeth bared already. He held out both hands. "Mine, mine, mine," he said. Fred turned the pineapple in his hands, looking for a way in. Gingerly, he bit into one side of the fruit. A spike got up his nose, and another one got into his gums. But the juice was the most spectacular thing he had ever tasted. It was sweet and warm, and it sparked on his tongue. "It's amazing," he said. "It's like eating electricity." Con took a bite of hers. "It's more like waging a war than seems fair for a dessert," she said. Fred used his nails to scrape away the skin, and he dug out a handful of flesh. He held it out to Max. "Here, you'll like it." Leela was bent over her fruit, her plaits hanging over her lap. Now she looked up and grinned. Are you sure you wouldn't like a flint? She said. She'd cut her pineapple with one of the arrowhead flints and carved out rough palm-sized chunks. She laid them all out in a row. Oh, well, that might be an improvement, said Fred. Somehow he had pineapple juice in his ear. Con laughed. Leela hacked the 5th pineapple into quarters. For breakfast, she said. She wrapped each piece in a large leaf and stacked them outside the den. End of chapter.